So how are you doing, I suppose?
I'm doing well. I was at a tech freedom summit here in New Hampshire today, and I popped home to do this podcast. So it's been an interesting day. I've been talking to and meeting a lot of people.
Hell yeah. So I have some prepared questions here. I was thinking if there's time at the end, we could have like questions from like super chats if you're open to that, if we got enough time.
So I have got about 45 minutes total. We can go fast. I can keep my answers short. I can also talk pretty fast, but I've got to get out of here in about 45 minutes. And I wish I'd given you more time. We can do another one if you want in the future, but I kind of screwed up today, my scheduling a little bit today. So yeah, I've got to get out of here in about 45 minutes.
All right, so let's try quick fire these ones. So first of all, LPNH has been very, very, very successful, more successful than any other affiliate, at least as far as social media is concerned. So like kind of what does that look like on the back end? What kinds of procedures have been put in place to allow that to happen?
Practically none, which of course is the best procedure. You know, I've done a lot of interesting things in my life, and one of the things that I've learned is you succeed by selecting for people. So there's this misunderstanding that I make all the LPNH tweets. I don't. In the past year, I probably made less than 30% of them. There are times where I've been higher than that, but what I've done is tried to find people who I think are good posters and said, go wild. You know, I think that you get really good results. You know, all of my companies have succeeded because I found the right people and I've gotten out of the way, you know, and so I don't do that much for LPNH. There's all these other people who do the things. You know, I help coordinate things. You know, obviously when there's a time for someone to be responsible, that's me now that I'm chair, and I do think that I am responsible for the things that come out of the account ultimately. You know, buck stops with me. That's what it means to be the guy. But I have done very little beyond select for the right people and get out of the way. Perfect.
So on the LNC motion to disaffiliate, they had like three main claims. Like the big headline one was about, apologies if we are rushing through this a bit, unfortunately.
No, let's do it.
So their big headline was the public endorsement of Donald Trump in 2014, which they claimed to violate the bylaws. And so what is the current LPNH leadership view of that endorsement and whether or not that was appropriately dealt with internally in your viewpoint?
Yeah, I think it's fair to read the Trump endorsement as a violation of the Libertarian Party bylaws. I think if there's anything that, well, maybe I wouldn't say if there's anything that it means to be a libertarian, but certainly a core part of what it means to be a libertarian is to take rules and procedures and these kinds of things seriously. And I think it is fair to judge the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire as it being inappropriate for them to have endorsed Trump. But the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire rectified that itself. Every single executive committee member who voted to endorse Trump was replaced at the very next convention. I didn't vote to endorse Trump. It was a controversial vote. It passed 3-1. So there were only 4 people who even voted on it. It passed 3-1. The one against ended up as the next chair, and the 3 who voted for it were off the LPNH executive committee. So, you know, we kind of thought it was over. This is something that happened more than 2 years ago. The LNC had plenty of time to act on it. I've only been the chair of LPNH since, I don't know if it was the end of February or the beginning of March, so less than 6 months. None of this happened under my leadership. I didn't vote for it myself. So, you know, I can understand not liking that we did this, but the LNC already went through like it's all just fake. Like it's all fake. What the LNC doesn't like is that we violate progressive shibboleths. We don't talk like progressives. The LNC elected the new Libertarian Party leadership. Like, they filled the Libertarian Party store with like gay t-shirts and what libertarianism means is to be transgender and like this type of stuff. They don't like that we acknowledge that, you know, intelligence is real and race is different intelligence. They don't like that we don't celebrate being gay because something like half to 2/3 of the current LNC are homosexuals. This is what they don't like about us. All the other stuff is a pretext. So, you know, did the Trump endorsement violate the rules? Yeah, I would say that it did, but that's not what any of this is about. And anyone who's trying to claim that this is what it's about, you know, is kind of not observing reality.
Yeah, so one of the things that came up in the Judicial Committee hearing, which people can go watch on YouTube in full, it was live streamed, the whole thing. One of the things that came out in that was that the LNC wanted to do this, or I can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but they didn't have the votes at the time. And so now that they had the votes, then they did it. So was this something that was like public knowledge on the floor? Like, oh, we're going to try and get the votes to get rid of LPNH, and like that's what this new committee is running on? Or was this kind of like behind the scenes?
It was entirely behind the scenes. So I'll give you an example. LPNH, we had our 14 delegates at convention, and we have the most delegates per capita of any state at the LNC convention because we are the most successful state affiliate. We had a member of our crew who's not a hardcore LPNH guy. He doesn't always like the way that we're kind of, brash or in your face or whatever. And he was interested in voting for the current LNC chair, the homosexual criminal tattooed guy, Evan or whatever. And I was like, Rich, I think that guy might kick us out if you vote for him. And Rich, the guy, he's like, he doesn't want to do that. He just wants to make the Libertarian Party better. And so, like, they were very two-faced. This is what drives me crazy about this stuff. And it does, I don't want to let the losers win, but it does make me not want to be involved in this stuff. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always stayed away from politics. Politics, it's so awful. You get so many snaky people. It's like, when you're an entrepreneur, your product succeeds in the marketplace, your graph goes up or it goes down, you make money or you don't. But you deal with reality, you're in charge. The LP is like the opposite of this. It's like all of these liars and snakes and awful people who will just lie to your face and do something else. Like, the quality of person inside the current Libertarian Party is so awful. Like, I can understand people not liking me. I can understand people not, that's fine. But something that people don't accuse me of is being a liar or being a snake. Like, where I stand at all times. What I believe comes out of my mouth. I'm not doing this two-faced stuff. And it's so much two-faced, lying snake behavior, theater kid behavior. And it's not even smart. They're all like midwit theater kid snakes. So they didn't admit that they were doing any of this. They were gathering in their group chats. They had all their private group chats where they were planning all this and plotting all this. But there's someone who leaked a whole bunch of audio where this was on, it's on Bryce Don's X account. Someone recorded them talking, and they were plotting, well in advance that this was the entire purpose of convention, was to disaffiliate LPNH. This is what the Libertarian Party has become. This is what they care about. They're not trying to achieve libertarianism. They're not trying to advance liberty. The entire plot was get rid of LPNH, the most libertarian affiliate in the most libertarian state, the only state affiliate that's making any difference, that's getting any attention. We've got to chop their head off. It's I'm very competitive, so I'm like reticent to walk away. But these aren't people that can build anything. They're awful people.
So another thing that came up, and this kind of relates to their third claim. I kind of like put the first two claims into one. Time constraints, unfortunately, for the LNC. If they're watching, try to do a better job of this in future. I don't know. But their third claim seemed to me the most vague, and this was something that came out in the hearing, was they said that you've, quote, LPNH has, quote, espoused numerous anti-libertarian positions on a national level, and then they also add like an and more after that, which, so I want to know, has the LNC at any point leading up to the motion, or even since the motion, given you like specific details on what those positions are, like specific citations of like LPNH is saying this here, and this is in contravention to our principles, blah, 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 blah.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only thing was the Trump endorsement, which our party already rectified. We already replaced leadership. We even put out a repudiation of the Trump statement. So the current LPNH XCOM said, we don't stand by this. We think it is not valid. This is not our current position. The current LPNH does not endorse Trump. And this is, something that I believe strongly is, if you want people to follow you, if you want people to respect you, you have to be better. If the Libertarian Party wants people to join it and participate in it, then the way that it conducts justice, the way that it makes decisions, this has to be a procedure which is better than the status quo. Have a company, had/have a company that went through the rigor with the federal government. 5 years of negotiations with the SEC. We spent millions of dollars. We ultimately went to a battle in federal court. It was very expensive. It went on for a long time. The federal government treated me better than the Libertarian Party did. They had better standards of evidence production. They had better procedures of fairness. And so it's like, this is an anti-government entity that in its own internal procedures is worse than the federal government. You're dead. Like, the internal procedures of the Libertarian Party have to be better than the procedures of the United States federal government. That's the floor of whether what you're going to do gets anywhere. And that's not even me saying I'm right or that we should have won. But anyone who would look at this procedurally, it's like, this is a bunch of theater kids who were mad and couldn't even perform basic rigor. You know, like, I had a judge in my case who I could tell didn't like us, but he was at least rigorous. He at least like presented rigor and did these kinds of things and was like at least a little bit thoughtful. This was worse. And so it shows how dead the Libertarian Party is as a movement. It's like, you have to be better than the status quo. And also, by the way, I can tell that you want to just rapid fire questions. So if I'm taking too long, cut me off. And you know that you're welcome to disagree with me as well. Like, you can call me an idiot on the podcast. I'll still like you. You know, like you know, I know you're an opinionated guy. I know you're a smart opinionated guy. Like, you know, push back, ask questions, be skeptical. It's a much better show, you know? Yeah,
no worries. I mean, it is rapid fire, but I mean, of course, I've been public that I am not in support of disaffiliation, certainly not. You know, I've had my disagreements with you. I've had my disagreements with other people at LPNH. But I think, you know, something that people need to recognize, you know, for this interview, I try to be, you know, as unbiased as possible. I'm just trying to ask, you know, get the facts out there. But obviously, I mean, I watched the whole stream and I did not agree with the Judicial Committee's decision. And something in that stream that's really heavily emphasized by Hewitt, I believe, was the LPNH guy there. Is this notion of for cause, that you can only be disaffiliated for cause, and that requires like specific things like an investigation, you know, notice beforehand so that there some sort of curative measures can be put in place, which was done in the case of, I believe it was New Mexico, by Angela McArdle's LNC, that those types of procedures were taking place. And it sounds like none of that did happen. They just kind of sprung this on you. But I suppose, you know, is your viewpoint on this that, like, they're even being honest about what their dispute is with LPNH, that these reasons they state in their motion are like the real motivating factors behind it?
No, not at all. And this is the problem, is that they're not, there isn't an ounce of honesty in these people. You know, LPNH had a meeting with Stephen Nicolia something like 18 months ago, and it was like, okay, you disagree with us, but let's lean, like, the conclusion of this discussion was, okay, let's lean into it. Like, we'll be respectful. Let's have debates. Let's showcase that when libertarians disagree, we're thoughtful and we engage in the discussion of ideas. And, you know, Nicolia and the other guy on the call, Paul Dar, you know, they were like, yeah, we're going to do this. We'll talk to LPNH. We'll showcase the issues. Because again, I think it's perfectly fine to disagree with LPNH. I think it's perfectly fine to disagree with me. I think there's no problem. Nothing that I've ever demanded, nothing that LPNH has ever demanded is that everything we say is right and true. This kind of thinking is crazy. You know, I by education and by disposition, I'm a physicist. I like going through the evidence. I like sorting through claims. You know, this is why I know that there's some of your audience that doesn't like me, but I even like the people in your audience who don't like me because they have this disposition. They're curious about what's true. They want to find the truth, and maybe their truth seeking has led them to think that I'm a retarded prag or whatever. I don't even know the language that your audience all uses, but you know, but they still nonetheless at least have the disposition of the kind of person that I like. These people, the people who did all this, they're not remotely close to this. They are like, we think libertarianism is important because it allows you to be like a transgendered bum and to be a crappy person in public parks. And this is why we're libertarians, and we've never read a book. We don't care to argue with you. We're just gonna, and this is what loser behavior does, right? Like, when truth is on your side, when rationality is on your side, you're like, I'll have the public conversation. When it's not on your side, you gather in back rooms, you do the cancel culture, you know, kind of thing, and this is exactly what they did. There was never at any point, a single time, there was any open discussion, not at the LNC meeting, not at the judicial hearing, not at any point. You know, like the gay LP candidate for president, what was his name? Chase Oliver was like, he was invited to go on Timcast with me. He declined going on Timcast because I would be there. He's been invited to other prominent podcasts with me. He won't go on. He simultaneously believes that we're like evil fascists, but could never exchange a word in public with me or anyone else. And when you see that people can't do this, when they can't engage in a public exchange of their ideas, you can pretty much tell that they're wrong. Like, I will talk to anyone. I went on Fakertarians like 4 years ago and took them on 8-on-1 because I'm confident in my ideas. I can take on any number of people and talk about my ideas. There's no quantity that would be too many. But these people, they live in the agreeable mindset. For them, truth is socially determined, and it's very difficult to reason or deal with people like this.
So yeah, so to sort of speak to some of those people, I mean, I got a lot of flack from my audience when I initially came out in support of LPNH against the disaffiliation. So I wanted to kind of get some of the arguments they were making. I didn't get any specifics on them supporting disaffiliation necessarily. I believe there definitely are those people out there, but I wasn't able to get them, at least when I put out the signal earlier today. But so what would you say specifically to this type of the anti-pragmatist people who are perhaps in my audience, who are opposed to some of the things LPNH says?
Well, I would prefer to discuss specifics to discussing a vague cloud of like people who don't like what LPNH said. One of the things I'll also find is like you'll find these people who don't like what LPNH said, and they'll like 8 other things that LPNH said that are also unpopular. And so they didn't like one other thing that was unpopular. And so I think it is really important to go through, one by one. To me, pragmatists, and it's funny because inside of the LP we're supposed to be like the anti-pragmatist caucus, but. I do not find pragmatism, I do not find consequentialism to be inherently dirty words or inherently dirty concepts. I have a pretty constrained view of what I'm trying to accomplish. I live in New Hampshire as part of the Free State movement. New Hampshire is the most libertarian and freest state in America. It's arguably the freest state in the world. That could be maybe contested. I see my role as advancing the ball. I want LPNH to help advance the ball. I am not against these more abstract philosophical types of arguments. I have a bunch of that background myself, but I am, I have a family. I have 4 kids. I want the world to be a better place for them. I am much less interested. 20 years ago, I would have been way more interested in the abstract philosophical arguments, and we could argue about flagpole scenarios and lifeboat scenarios. Like, I read all this stuff, I consumed all of it. Like, I'm not the kind of person who just came to the libertarian movement, because there's a flag that I can wear. Like, I've been steeped in this stuff. I'm an internet libertarian nerd from a very early era, and the conclusion that I've ultimately reached, which I'd be happy to defend, are that it makes way more sense to figure out how I can advance the ball in the real world than to argue about these kinds of theoretical kinds of things. If people want to talk about specific claims, or if you want to raise specific claims, we can go through them. But yeah, I am much more interested in advancing liberty in the real world as I see it than sort of philosophical purism. I understand that you yourself or members of your audience may see this type of, quote, pragmatism as the road to hell, etc. I see it as this is the best place in the world to live, and we're making it better.